All right, good morning. We have Mr. Mack here, we got Ms. Smith, and we got our guest, Perla Vargas here. She's going to be talking about ABA therapy. So, Perla, what is your job title, and what would you say like a description of your job is?
So my job title is a registered behavioral technician. So basically, I work with kids in home for 2 to 3 hours a session per day, and we basically work on skills that they have trouble with. So whether it be reading, writing, emotional skills, playing games, sharing, just a range of skills that they might have difficulty with. So it's a lot more intense than if you were in school working on these because it's one on one. So it's just the kid and me in the room. And then sometimes the parent is involved. So they can get in on it too. And we teach the parents how to use the, I guess, techniques that we use. But we also play because a lot of our kids are little, so I have kids that are 3 years to like 10 years old. So they're still kids. They like to play, and 2 to 3 hours to sit in a chair is a really long time. So that's that's pretty much it.
And so, how long have you been in this particular field, and how long have you been with the company that you're with?
So I've been in this field for 4 years now, and with this company, it's been almost 4 years as well. So I started doing this in June, and then with this specific company, I started in August. So almost 4 years.
And what's the name of the company you work for?
It's called Applied Behavioral Consulting. So they're based out of Western Springs, but they have a clinic in Plainfield, and then we service a lot of kids all over the western suburbs, southern suburbs, north suburbs. So pretty much anywhere.
Hello, hello. So what made you pick this career? What made you choose this?
So this career was actually brought on to me by a family friend. So she kind of recruited me at first, and she was like, "Hey, you're really good with kids. I see that you really like to be around kids. Like, would you be interested in doing this?" And I told her, "Well, I don't have any experience working with kids with autism." So I didn't know like anything about working with them. And she was like, "It's okay. We train kids like straight out of high school." So that was the cool part for me because I didn't have to have any experience. Like they would train me straight on. So when I was with that company, she trained me for a little bit, and then I was on my own doing therapy. And then after that, I left that company and moved with the company that I'm with now. And just like being with the kids, I love working with kids and I love playing with them and working on things that they need help with. So that's kind of what brought me into this career and like wanting to help kids that, needed help with everyday things like tying their shoe, reading, playing. I don't know. I guess it brings me a lot of joy to be around kids and just, wanting to help them and help their families to get through sometimes the struggles that, their disorder poses for them.
That is awesome. And just even thinking about that and building on that a little bit, because certain qualities we have to have as people, right? To kind of build in what we choose for our passion project. So like with thinking about students, when you were younger or as you were going through this, what kinds of qualities do you feel like you have or that you displayed that would lead you into this kind of career?
I think definitely being like playful, like very upbeat and just smiling all the time. Like I love being around people. I love being around kids. So I think just making sure that you like to be around other people, like keeping that open mind and wanting to play and just be kind of like a kid, even as an adult, like going through that stage. I think that's really cool because even now, like, what's really cool about my job is like, a lot of jobs have dress codes. We don't really have one. Like, I could show up in like leggings or like workout pants or a t-shirt and it be okay, because a lot of the times I'm not sitting down. I'm either running around with them, or we're playing a game, or we're outside on the trampoline. And that is what's so cool about this job, is that because it is in the home, you can use whatever the client has in their home. So if like the kid has a pool, I have a kid that he likes to splash in the pool. So he gets his rewards through going outside to splash in this pool, especially during the summertime. So I think like being a kid at heart is definitely something big that I noticed. And like being surrounded and like just wanting to be with other people, I guess. A second one I would say is definitely like a sense of humor, because kids are smart. They try to trick you. They want to do whatever they want. So I think having that sense of humor and like not taking things personally either. Because when I work with some of the kids, they'll tell me like, Miss Perla, I don't want you here. You need to go home. Like, Miss Perla, I hate doing this. Like, so the kids like to tell you up front like how they feel. So I think just keeping an open mind and like not taking it personally that you did something to them, but that they're just like, they're still a kid. They don't want to do work. So being a kid and being like, okay, well, if we do this, then we can go play outside in the pool or jump on the trampoline or whatever it is that they like to do. So knowing what they like to do has really helped too. And then, especially if you like to do it, like I like to jump on the trampoline, I like to be, out with them. So that helps a lot too.
So talk a little bit about what exactly you do. So now obviously you do therapy, but like what exactly does it do? Because like obviously you do this during times where like most kids would be in school, right? So it's like some of these schools or some of these kids I know don't go to school. So like what are some of the things, you can talk about a few things that like you're working on, and how do you work on those things? Just kind of a little bit more specific about what exactly, some of the things that you work on with the kids.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we work on with the kids. So for example, sitting in his or her chair, that's like one big thing that we start off with clients that are really little. So some kids that aren't used to sitting in a chair for 2 hours, that's the first thing that we start working on them with, is just knowing that they have to sit down, especially because like you said, a lot of these kids don't go to school, so they don't know that they're supposed to sit for, I don't know, X amount of time. So they're like, oh, I can just come sit down for one thing and then get up and go. So their tolerance, we build up their tolerance for them to want to sit in the chair and work with us. And once they're in the chair, we call them targets. So the targets that we work on are things that you would learn in school, like your colors, your numbers, letters, and they're very specific. So everything is a card. So it's like a little card, and then it has the color on it, the letter, and we ask them like, give me this color. So we lay out a display of cards, and they give us like, say I lay out ABC. I tell them, give me B. So then they give me B. Some of the times they don't know it because they haven't seen it because they're not in school. So that's where the teaching part comes in. And once we do that, then we can move on to other things, like I mentioned, like colors and letters. We also work on like playing games appropriately. So knowing like the rules, knowing that it's okay to lose, like those social emotional skills that you would get from school and you would be learning with other kids their age. Another thing that we can do is teach kids like how to tie their shoes, how to put on a jacket, how to put on pants. Um, we do potty training too. So that's another big thing. It's a very intensive like program that goes on throughout a few days. So we go into the home, and it's the therapists that run that from like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. And most of our kids are trained, like potty trained within 3 days. Um, there's so many things that we do. We do like conversational targets. So what we do is like, we ask them like, what's your favorite color? What is where do you like to play? Like, what do you like to do on the weekends? Stuff like that. What's your favorite game? Things like that, like I said, that you would get from the school, but unfortunately you're not, because you're not in school at that time. So that's what we work on a lot with. And then we also have some kids that are not able to communicate with us verbally, so they're not able to talk to us. So what we do is we have little pictures of things that they might want. So we teach them, like, if you want this, you need to point to it. So we teach a lot of like fine motor and gross motor skills too. So like pointing, like making okay signs, cutting, writing. We also teach like those gross motor skills, so like throwing a ball, jumping, like galloping, like all those things. So literally all the things that you would learn in the school, you can learn with us, but it's just more intense because it's with one person. And then what we do too is we get like I said earlier, we get the parents involved too, so that they can teach them, and then they can, practice it on their own, like outside of our session. So a lot of our things involve cards, and also like conversational topics if they're able to talk. And if not, then we usually use pictures.
So your title is a registered behavioral technician. So like talk a little bit about how important is it to like know, like understanding what behavior is to be able to do the job that you do. Because like I think a lot of people don't really understand how behavior really works and how we as people really learn things.
Yeah, so it's very important. It's like the core of my job. You have to know behavior. Like I said earlier, kids get away, they will try to get away with anything. They're very, very smart. So most of the time, what comes from them is like they either want something, they don't want to do something, they want to eat, they want to get away from you, like they don't want to work. So finding the core of whatever they want is like crucial, because that way you'll be able to work with them in that way. So like say if I have a kid that he basically gets upset when he loses a game. So, he starts crying, he starts like in a sense he has a tantrum. So for me, what I'm supposed to do is I'm not supposed to give him any attention. So when kids are acting that way, a lot of the times what they're looking for is attention, because then he'll start like fake crying, he'll turn his back toward me, and then he'll like slowly like peek over his shoulder to see if I'm looking at him, but I'm not looking at him. And that's one of the biggest things, is like giving kids attention when they're doing those kind of things. So if you feed into it, they'll keep doing it because they know that you're watching them. They know that there's something there, like you care about what they're doing. But the whole point is like to show that I guess you kind of don't care and you want them to like return to whatever you were doing before. So making sure that you give the proper attention. So then once like say he stopped crying, I'll be like, "Oh, I liked how you calmed down. I liked how you stopped crying." And then they'll like slowly start to smile and like come back. So you're giving attention to the things that I guess they're doing properly, instead of, screaming and yelling and telling you, "I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this." So if you feed into that, a lot of the times they try to waste time and like, get away with things during therapy. Um, and then another thing too is like we don't have a lot of kids that are aggressive, but the ones that we do have that are aggressive, they like to, like not necessarily punch us, but like wave a hand at us, or like sometimes like I have long hair, so I can't leave my hair down because I learned my lesson. They will pull your hair. So making sure that whenever they do something like that, like show no emotion. That's another thing too. If you show emotion, they won't, like they'll just keep doing it. They'll be like, "Oh, she laughed," or, "Oh, I hurt her," or whatever it was. And that's what they like to see, is they like to get a reaction out of people. So just showing no emotion, like not taking things personally either. Like say if you're playing a game or you're doing a target at the table and they just don't want to do it, like don't be like, "Oh, let's do it," like keep feeding into that, because most of the 10 out of 10 times they won't do it because you're asking them so many times. So understanding behavior is huge in our field. And to talk a little bit about how you get there is, so they take on people that are like 18, 19-year-olds, like I said, straight out of high school. They will take you on, and what they will do is they will train you. With my company, what they did is they had me come into homes and observe for, I think it was about a week. So I observed for like a week, and then my first day when they were like, okay, we're gonna start having you work with the kids, what they do is they normally just let you kind of like play with them, because one of the most important things for kids with autism is knowing who they're working with. If they don't know you, they won't sit down with you for 2 hours. So they want to make sure that the kid knows you, they know who you are, they feel safe too. So like in our field, the best way to do that is by playing with them, playing with them and making sure you know what they like and know how they react during whatever you're doing with them. So then once you start playing with them, they feel comfortable with you, then you'll be able to sit down and actually work with them. And what we call it placing demands. So like each time we ask them a question or tell them to do something, we're telling them to, basically obey a command. So if you have no rapport or you have no like trust with that kid, he's not going to do it. He or she's not going to do it for you. So then once that is established, then you can start doing sessions on your own. But for those first couple of weeks, the company or they'll have someone with you. And then after that, you do have to take a test, like to have the title I have. So my company, what they did is they provided like a study guide for me and like study notes, and there's like modules that you have to go through. Once you do all of that, you just have to go to like a testing center. I don't remember how long the test takes, but it wasn't too bad. And then you find out the day of if you passed or not. And once you pass, then you have the title. And like a lot of the times then the company will give you like money. I know money is a big thing. Like they'll give you a raise when you do get that title. So yeah.
I just want to praise you for being able to ignore kids who want their attention. Before I came here, I cannot ignore people. I'm like terrible at the silent treatment. If you do something, I just start laughing. So students like, are you seeking positive attention or negative attention? Because we don't give it, and that would make them change. Because I cannot sit there and ignore you crying. It drives me crazy. So I applaud you for that, because that takes a totally different level of patience and focus that I do not have. So what career did you originally want to go into after high school before you were offered this opportunity?
So right after high school, well, actually, I wanted to do occupational therapy, which I will be doing. But this was kind of like the segue to that career, because another big thing about this career is that it can be part-time or it can be full-time, and you can create your schedule how you want. So depending on the company that you're with, I basically made my schedule. So I work 9 to 11 every day, Monday through Friday right now. And then I have another session on Fridays, 11:30 to 1:30. And then Saturdays I work in the morning, 9 to 11. So it's not where you like sit all day at the same location. You do have to drive to different locations depending on what time, your kids have therapy. Or if my company just got a clinic in Plainfield. So with them, you can either work in the clinic or you can work in the homes. So um, I wanted to do occupational therapy, and I was looking into that at first, and then I got into school, but this was a good job for me to have because it was so flexible. And I was able to fill in like the gaps that I wasn't in school for. So if I had school like 1 to 4, I could do a session 9 to 12 in the morning, and that fit my schedule really well. But I wanted to have something flexible, so this was really good to have. And then, yeah, I mean, I've stuck through it. It helped me get through school. It was good to have like as a backup too, because like I said, they train you right out of high school. So having that like if like say if your plan A doesn't work, like this is for me, this was a good plan B. I'm like, okay, if I don't get into occupational therapy school, like I like working with kids, I like what I'm doing, like this could potentially be something else I wanted to do. So sorry, kind of segued from your question because what I wanted to do after high school is actually what I will be doing. But but yeah, but overall, I mean, it's been a great career. Like I said, I highly recommend it to people that are like straight out of high school, really like working with kids, are interested in kids with special needs. And that's another thing, like um, being in this field, you might encounter mostly kids with autism, but there are also other kids that have like ADHD or other disorders. It's not just for kids with autism. It can be literally applied to anyone. Like I use it with our dog Harley. Like if he does something bad, like I'm not giving you attention. So it can be applied into all aspects of your life. So I think that's one of the really cool things about it.
That's really awesome. And it sounds like, again, just lots of versatility, right? Lots of versatility there, a lot of flexibility. But it says a lot about you and your character to be able to even do something like that. Cause I'm with Miss Smith on this. I'm with Shakita on this. I can't do it. So it says, speaks to you, patience, right? And you're talking about still having that kid at heart. But I'd be really interested to know how has, there have been so many changes. How has the pandemic affected
Oh.
what it is that you do and how you support these kids?
Yeah, so trying to remember how it all started. So last year, in March, so to preface that, the company that I work for, I don't know if all companies are like this, but we are basically spread out into what we call teams. So each kiddo has a team. So there are certain therapists on each team. And like say if I don't know, tomorrow I have a doctor's appointment in the morning. I can't make my session. Like another therapist that has trained there and knows that client, they can come and sub for me there. So they can basically like pick up my session. So during the pandemic, that was like a no. They told us you can't go to other clients' homes. You're not able to sub, which impacted a lot of us because that's how we were able to get around and like see different kids and like communicate with other parents. Because in when you're by yourself in this field, sometimes it does get a little lonely because the only people that you see are literally like the kids or the parents, but you don't see any other therapists. So if you like to work with people and you like to be around people, like just remember, like if you're doing in-home therapy, you don't always get to see therapists. So that's a big thing I would like shout out, I guess. But in the clinic, like yes, you'll be around a lot of therapists, but in the home, you'll be by yourself most of the time, unless you have someone that comes with you to like just see what's going on, like check up on you. But so that was one of the things. A lot of our clients actually stopped services for a few weeks. So they didn't feel comfortable with, with therapists coming into the home or any other people. So there were clients that completely stopped for 2 weeks to like 6 weeks. So instead, what they did is we started doing like telehealth sessions. But one of the biggest things with kids with autism is that their attention span is very short. So to try and keep them in front of a computer for a regular session, like 2 hours, that wasn't going to happen. So a lot of our sessions were down to an hour, 45 minutes. Which the kids actually did pretty good for the first few weeks because it was like this novice idea of like, oh, I get to sit in front of the computer and see Miss Perla, and she's not here with me. But then after like the first few weeks, it was like, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not sitting in front of the computer for an hour straight. So that was like tough. But then once the summer started to hit, a lot of the parents were like, okay, we feel safe, like we feel okay with therapists coming in, and we wore masks and stuff. So I had a couple clients that I could go see, but I could only go see them like if I went to one, I couldn't go to the next for like a couple weeks. So we had to keep ourselves spread out basically, and we were allowed only like 2 homes to go to. So I chose one and I just stuck with that one. Then after that, they're like, okay, parents are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. Like, do you guys want to go to 3 homes instead of 2? So then people started like slowly opening up their homes. So a lot of the parents were uncomfortable in the beginning. And now back in January, with the vaccine and everything, a lot of therapists started to get the vaccine. So then that's when they surveyed the parents again, and they were like, hey, are you comfortable with like more than 2 therapists coming into your home? So now we have it where we can go back and we can take like pick up sessions. Like if another therapist needs coverage, like we can go into the home now depending on the parents' comfortability. So now things are like, I guess, kind of back to what they used to be. But there are still some clients that are only comfortable with telehealth sessions, and those are like an hour and a half for the kids that do have those. But for me personally, I have 3 clients that I go to and I see throughout the week. So for me, it's pretty much like, I guess, back to normal to what it was, because now I get to see all those kids and now I can go to other kids' homes too.
What would you say a typical day or a typical session looks like? Like if you had to like outline it, what would it look like?
So, so for me, okay, so if your session is 2 hours, they give us the first 15 minutes to set up. So, like I said, we use a lot of cards, toys. We have an iPad that we take data on. So when you present a card to a kid, and you ask them what color it is and you present the blue card and they say blue, obviously they're correct. So we take data on that, whether it's correct or incorrect. So we also have an iPad. So that's another thing that you have to do. So we have the iPad. We have all the cards and toys and everything that we set up. So we get the first 15 minutes to read over any notes that we haven't read since the last time that we were there. Then after that, we have the kid come and sit down, and we basically just start doing whatever we need to do with them, like whatever targets are in. Um, and it depends on like how much they can tolerate. Each kid can tolerate maybe 10 minutes of working straight through, and then they need a break. So with behavior, you have to be able to kind of tell, like if your kid is like yawning and like falling asleep and just like needing a break, like obviously you would give them a break and not push them, because then they won't like that very much and then they won't work for you anymore. So making sure to pick up on those cues, that's another behavioral thing, like making sure you pick up on the cues of them being tired. So then I like to give the kids like a 5-minute break. So I'll set the timer. I'll be like, okay, you have 5 minutes. You can do whatever you want. So if it's going outside, if it's playing a different game, if it's playing with your siblings, like whatever it is, you have 5 minutes to do it. Then once they come back, then we start over. And what we have is a token system, which means we have a strip of whatever they like. They could be trains, they could be stickers, like whatever. So it's just a row of like 5 Velcro circles, and each time they do like a target right, they get whatever they want, like a Velcro sticker. So once, say if they have 5, if you get all 5, then that's your break time. So that's what helps them kind of like gauge, like, oh, okay, I need 2 more stickers, then I get my break. So that's a good visual for them to have. So once they do that, then we keep playing, and it's kind of just like a cycle. They come back, they work, they take a break. And for the younger kids, what I do is like in the middle of the session, I give them like a 10 or 15-minute break just to kind of break it up even more. Just like I said, they're little, like you can't expect a 3-year-old to sit for 2 hours straight. So um after that, like we pretty much just start wrapping up, and then the last 15 minutes is like cleaning up. Now with COVID, which we were doing before anyway, but with COVID now, we make sure to wipe everything down, make sure everything's sanitized. And then I write my note. So at the end of each session, you write a note and you basically just write like what happened in your session, like what went well, what didn't go well, like, and what can you do for the next session. And then the therapist that comes in after you will be able to read that, and they'll kind of like be able to pick up where you left off. So then after that, you might talk to the parents for a little bit, like, hey, so and so did great today, or like, hey, I had this problem with so and so. And then the parents are also really helpful with if they're seeing other behaviors that you aren't, or if you're seeing behaviors that they aren't, you can communicate with them and like work on that with them. And then after that, depending on if you have another session or not, you would just drive to your next session, or you would just like be done for the day. So like I said, it just really depends on how many you have. I've had days where I have 2 or 3 sessions a day, so that means a lot of driving. So this job does require that you, if you do in-home, you do have to drive a lot. So you have to drive to your first session, and then from your first session, you have to go to your second session, and so on. So that's another big thing. Yeah, you have to drive a lot. If you work like 30 hours, you have a lot of kids, you got to drive to a lot of places. Um, but yeah, I mean, a typical day, it varies every single day, but that's basically like, I guess, the layout of what a more normal session would be. If you have a kid that, cries or has tantrums or whatever it is, then your session might go a little bit different, and you might not do like as much work. You might be doing like waiting it out until they're done crying. So then that you can work.
So, so you guys teach them a lot of things, right? You said in terms of like different skills and all that. How do you, and I know you do it through targets, how do you guys determine when to go on to the next step or on to the next target?
Yeah, so like I said, we take data on all of our kids. So I'm trying to break it down in the least confusing way possible. So that the app that we put our data in, when it's correct, incorrect, so they have to be at 90% or higher for 2 days straight. So that means if I ask you what color is it and you tell me blue and it's correct, and you do it 3 times and you get 100% today. So then tomorrow when I come back and I run it again and I do it again 3 times at 100%, that's 2 days at 100%. And then that means it. Like you don't need to practice it as in depth as we were before. So then that's when we are like, okay, and now the data shows that this, so we don't have to practice it as hard anymore. And then the app tells us basically like, hey, you're done with the color blue, you can move on to the color green. So that's how we know, because of the numbers. So for my job, a lot of what I do is data specific. So it's not subjective. So it's not like, oh, I think he knows it today. Like it's either right or it's wrong. So when we use those numbers, that's what tells us, okay, you can move on to the color green now. I hope that's not too confusing, but that's the best way that I can explain it. And then once they finish with the color blue, in a few weeks you would test them again and see, okay, do they actually know the color blue, or did they just memorize it that day and forget about it for the next 2 weeks?
What is some advice that you would give middle schoolers who are considering going into this field of work?
I would say to be yourself, like with these kids. They really, really like it when people come in and show their personality and show you like who they truly are. They really like to be around people that want to be around them. So if you really like to work with kids, I would say like just like be yourself. Like don't try and like be overly exciting, or I don't know if I'm explaining it the right way, but sometimes when people get around kids, they get like super excited, like, oh my gosh, how are you, blah, blah, blah. Like they get into like this high pitched voice, and with them, like talking to them like how we're talking to one another is a big thing. They like that like realness of people, because they, at the end of they're kids, they're people like us too, and they deserve to be talked to like how we talk to one another and communicate with one another, and not like they're little, like some of them are little, and sometimes you can get away with that, but for like 8-year-olds, like you can't talk to them like they're two, like we definitely know that they do need help with some things, but just because they need help doesn't mean, you can kind of like talk down to them. So I feel like be yourself. Like don't take things personally. I know it's really hard, especially with kids that have a lot of difficulties. And like I said, a lot of the kids tell me, don't come anymore, come back next week, I don't want to see you today. Like I don't want to do this. So I think like not taking it personally and just kind of like going with the flow, and just um with behavior, anything can happen. Like there was one day that I sat in a session and my kid cried for an hour, and I'm like, there's literally nothing I can do. Like I'm not going to keep feeding into that because that's what he likes. So sometimes your sessions don't go as planned. So being flexible is a huge, huge, huge thing, I would say, like keep in mind. And then yeah, I think the biggest thing for me though is just like telling them, just be yourself. Like, you know, the kids are smart. Like if you want to be there, they will pick up on that, and they'll want to be with you too. And especially because you'll be like the cool new person that like they've never met before, so they want to spend time with you. They're curious, they want to get to know you more, and they just want to be around people, especially those that aren't able to go to school.
All right. Any last questions, Ms. Pickett, Ms. Smith?
No last minute questions, but definitely a thank you. Because again, to be in a field like that, to have that kind of patience, to, want to make that difference and have that impact in the lives of, students, or in the lives of children and just their families, like hats off to you. That's awesome. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I'm jealous because I miss working with my kiddos. Middle school, like working with many adults. They try to tell you what to do. Totally different environment.
Well, these kids try to tell you what to do too. You just got to make sure you don't let them get away with it. The 3-year-old I have, he'll tell me, oh, and he'll like wave his finger at me. So they try to tell you what to do too, especially when they see you walk in the door. They'll be like, not today, Miss Perla, I don't feel like it.